to make sure they wouldn't match. So,
It is now 11 o'clock. Shall we have a pledge of allegiance? Oh, we don't have to?
We can just.
Okay. Call the meeting to order. Items for discussion, service provider agreement, Pelican Preserve Community Association.
Can I just ask,
It's always late.
Can-
Running.
for my own clarity, can we just restate what our purpose was for creating the service provider agreement? I would like to just make sure that we are all crystal on why we were doing this, because if we each have different agendas, we're never going to reach language agreement.
so I think our purpose was to have an agreement with KW and the district on what their duties and responsibilities in Pelican Preserve are going to be with regard to district assets.
Okay.
I think it also has to do with the finance of that as well, correct? What we pay them
What we pay them.
for their services.
And was this meant to be a transitional agreement in that, you know, we were trying to move to a less dependent state with KW, or is this supposed to be an ongoing agreement? That's the other question.
So I can chime in on that.
Okay.
Chelsea O'Reilly, District Manager. So let's go back a little bit with history. We've got some new members here, although maybe it may have been involved in the knowings of what's going on. So the district had in what we call an O&M agreement, operations and maintenance agreement, since 2012, if not before that. In 2020, there was an update, an amendment. So prior to 2020, this O&M agreement did not call for any management fee paid to the community association or their subs, KW, Castle, whomever it may be. In 2020, that there was an amendment to the O&M agreement that was done that increased the retainage amount from a previous $90,000 that the district fronted for them to, you know, pay bills and oversight to $103,000. Also in that included a new clause of a management fee, which it didn't have a specific dollar amount. It just said that it would be incorporated as part of the budget that would be provided by the management company or the community association, because this O&M agreement was with the district and the community association, although they subbed it to Castle and now KW to oversee the district assets. So what has since been done is the formalization of all of the subcommittees, although they may have been operating historically, we formalized them as a true subcommittee of you. And by doing that, the oversight of a lot of the assets in Pelican Preserve shifted from the management company, community association, to these subcommittees. And so what started as a discussion and trying to do a transition year, I think it kind of led into, hey, we want this to be more of a long-term commitment agreement between the district and the community association. So there was a committee or a group of us, Mr. Grega, Laura, myself, Faye, Nancy, and Jen, that have met since July, multiple times, either online or in person, trying to come to a new agreement, because the O&M agreement was more of a, here's a pot of money. We want you to oversee our assets, pay for them, ask for reimbursement. And what we're transitioning to is the district pays for, maintains, and oversees district assets. This new proposed agreement would be for services provided by the community association, KW, for this transition year of these assets, because there's a lot that we have to learn of what it is that the district has to oversee, since this O&M agreement has been in place since 2012.
So it is a transitional document.
That was the original intent when we first started meeting, but I think through conversations, the community, and I don't want to speak for the community association. I believe they're here to represent themselves, but I think it's their intent to have this as a long-term agreement.
But at this time, it is a transitional agreement.
The structure, the way that it's presented to you today is what morphed into the long-term agreement. It's not.
There's nothing transitional in this document.
Correct.
That is my
Yeah,
point.
it was meant to help with the edits. I mean, so that we aren't revisiting this every year and hashing this out. It was meant looking more long-term, what do we expect the needs of Pelican to be from the district, you know, and the district from Pelican. So that's kind of how we ended up with
So
this.
This is just like every other contract that we have. The vendor provides services and the fee reflects said services. This would be this could, and I believe it calls for, there's language in here calls for that fee to be provided to the district, just like in the O&M by early on in the budget cycle. Again, that ties to services. So you increase services, you increase the fee. You decrease services, you decrease the fee. This is a contract. So this is an agreement. It takes two parties to come to terms. If they don't come to terms, then services aren't provided. You don't enter into the contract. So we have spent an exorbitant amount of time trying to fine tune. There was a lot of, I won't say a lot, but there was, you know, let's agree to disagree. There was give and take on both sides. This agreement is what I believe to be a good agreement that we have negotiated with the community association. But ultimately, you all and the Board of Supervisors have the final decision. There were some conversations that really we agreed to disagree on, which was one, having a member of the community association being on PPAC incorporated in this agreement. That was one disagreement that we had. That's not a service we're paying for. We have to take this back to the principle of this is an agreement. What are we paying the community association for? What are we paying $5,000 a month for? What are we going to get of that? So as you see here is really the results of 7-8 months worth of discussions between the 6 of us.
I guess there's a couple other steps in there that I don't know when it was, but the O&M agreement was amended to earlier this fall to basically remove all maintenance activities, you know, so under the O&M agreement. And then about a month ago, the board basically canceled the O&M agreement effective, 90 days. So from whenever that date was.
It's January 23rd.
Okay.
And just the O&M agreement wasn't amended. The exhibits were amended. The O&M agreement allows us to amend the exhibits at any time without having to amend the O&M agreement. So just wanted to make sure that was clear.
So the exhibit was amended. Which in a layman's term, it amended the O&M, in my term, it amended the O&M. But so there was basically no relationship or, for the community association regarding gateway assets. And at one of the meetings, I spoke up and said, well, there is a liaison role that KW and the community association plays, for all the residents when they have an issue with something or whatever, residents tend to blame or contact the community association, and
There's no
know,
separation.
right.
Yeah.
And so I think that will help spur this on to have some sort of ongoing service agreement.
And I failed to mention this. You hit the nail on the head. The whole point of this transition year, at least when we first started discussing this, was everybody's trained to call Jen.
Yeah.
So if there are pond related issues, instead of calling Jen, we need to transition and train the community. Hey, you need to call the ponds committee chair, or you need to contact the district if it's a pothole repair, or whatever it may be. And that was really initial conversation of, hey, this needs to be a transition. We don't want to do it cold turkey.
Right.
And then we still have confusion, and because ultimately it's the resident that would be impacted the most.
I'm still a little confused about a couple of things here, Chelsea, and hopefully you can help me out here. You're talking about long-term. Are we talking years and years and years? Because it's my understanding that eventually, once these bonds are paid off, it kind of goes away.
No.
It does not.
No.
All right. So this is forever?
So this agreement, it's not forever. It has renewal terms in it, just like any other contract. And if you're not happy with the services, you cancel the contract. Same can be said on the community association side. If they're not happy with how the relationship or how this agreement is playing out, they can cancel it too. So we don't want to bind future PPACs or Board of Supervisors. So what started as a, hey, this is only a transition year, we will only want to do this once, in conversations with the community association, we tried to capture their interest of this being a long-term relationship. They're not going away, we're not going away.
And from the GSCDD perspective, it still provides a value for our assets. So you guys are comfortable with a fee being paid to support the assets. Is that correct?
We honestly take direction from you all. So if you say you want to push it all back to the community association and KW and have them oversee it, that's how it operated for 20+ years. From a district side, ultimately you all and the board make the policies, we're the implementers. So whichever direction you pursue, if it's, we take it all in-house and work with subcommittees, which is kind of the direction that has been going, we'll do that. We've been doing that for the last year. If you want to do the reverse and revert back to what was before and have KW oversee everything and the community association, we'll do that too.
What's the input from the subcommittees? Do they have any, I mean, they had any statements or they talked about this and saying, we don't want that, we want support, or are they good with overseeing their own projects and things like that? Do they need another person to hold their hands going through projects and things when they're the ones that know what's going on, knowing what's supposed to be done and knowing what, you know, if it's being done correctly or not or whatever? But do they need somebody from KW to hold their hands to walk through these projects and take
At
control?
this point, I do not. I think they're very comfortable
Yeah, I
doing
think
what they're doing.
the ponds is definitely comfortable. I mean, they've been operating for quite a while. Mark and his group have been up and running for over a year now, so they're doing fine. Safety and security is getting there. They are pretty much operating independently with a little bit of input from the district, just if they have questions about things, but they're all pretty independent. So, yeah.
I don't need to go through
Correct,
KW, so.
correct.
They realize that they have money. This is Marty.
Yeah,
They realize that
They
they
have
have money and they have the authority
to do what they want
to do what they
and
want
need to do.
because we've already approved the budget.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
Gave it to them.
So what's KW's?
So if you want to go.
Let me make a
kinda
comment.
read-
I think the chairmen of those committees have some expertise in that field, tremendous expertise.
The-
So-
The nature of this isn't so much to help this, as I read this attachment and the service agreement, isn't so much to help the subcommittees with their projects and effort, but it's a liaison between the community and the residents, a role to be a liaison between the community and the residents and those committees and our committee. So when a resident has an issue, they can bring it up to the community association or KW, and they refer it to the appropriate committee. You know, and half of our residents are part-timers. They have no interest in understanding the relationship
Their
of.
point is,
Available to go directly to those subcommittees instead of going through another person to relay the information onto another person.
So this is
They can
Marty.
still do, nothing keeps
So
them from.
we need to train our
Education.
residents
That's
on
correct.
where to go. And that's why everybody at this table here just said that this is a transition document.
Right.
So once we have the people trained on who to call Laura to say, hey, there's a pothole over here and we need it fixed. We don't have the need for all the services we're asking KW to provide now.
So,
But Ed's
But
point,
until that happens, okay, people just pick up the phone and, call KW over at the offices or walk in there from the bocce courts and say, hey. And that's not really KW's job. That's why we have an agreement to pay them for their services, to refer those issues to the district to fix.
so let me help explain process. So the district, the board canceled the O&M agreement, and that last day is January
23rd.
23rd. Okay. If we don't come to terms with a new agreement, nothing happens. We stop paying KW, PPCA. We continue really status quo. Now, any questions or comments that KW gets, or the community association gets from residents, I hope would be directed to the district, and I think that they would just say, hey, that's a district issue, you need to contact the district. I think really the meat and potatoes of this new proposed agreement is attachment A. And that's what we're looking for feedback on from you. Now, if this committee wants this to be only a transition year, then, and this takes into effect and you agree, and we get this, their community association approves it, we approve it. Let's just say by February 1st, then February 1st, we start to pay $5,000 a month for their services for a 1-year term. Now, if you don't agree with this, or you want to tweak it or amend it, or give us feedback, then we would go back to that working group and we'd go back to the community association and say, do you agree to this or do you not?
I think some of that does have to be tweaked. It's not 100%.
This is Marty. So, as long as we're all in agreement that this is a transition document, okay, I don't think it should be automatically renewed. I think every year, because we can tweak it as we go along, the PPAC needs to review that to distribute district funds. Otherwise, we're not doing our service to the community and spending district funds. We should review this every year and see if, well, maybe 5,000 is too much. Maybe 5,000 is not enough. Maybe some services need to increase, maybe some services need to decrease. I would expect that the services would decrease year after year until we have the community trained to call the district for district assets.
this is Peggy. Do we have anything it doesn't look like it's in the document, but for measurement on, how much time Jen is going to be spending?
So I believe in here, we requested, so just like any vendor that we have, work performed, we have to have proper invoice. And then I believe we discussed some type of documentation of, not necessarily at 121 John Doe calls asking, but some type of documentation supporting the $5,000 fee each month.
Yeah.
And we did talk about that. The details of it, we didn't really get into because we'd like to vet this from PPAC. Now, I know not to take up everybody's time, but you all wanted to make sure that the community association was here represented, and I believe they are. So if you'd like to invite them up to the mic, to the podium to
Yeah, I think
discuss.
that would be wonderful to
I have a question though. This particular document was not prepared by our attorney. I believe it was prepared by PPCA's
No,
attorney.
it was,
It was
so this
mutual.
service provider agreement is a boilerplate agreement that we use for work throughout the district. Now, we had to tweak it a little bit to make it work for this type of agreement. Their attorney did review it, but the original version of this came from us.
So our attorneys have been going back and forth on verbiage to it. So this is not something that we developed. This is something that attorneys on both sides have seen and redlined and wordsmithed and everything to get it to this point.
Well, in the original document, in the base document, that auto renewal clause, I think should be stricken from the document. I don't think it should auto renew. I think the PPAC should have control of the document. And once a year, if we decide to renew it, we can vote on it.
But isn't that part of the budgeting process when they would give us the dollars? We would
Yes.
talk about, is this the value that we want to
Well,
see?
your contract would be, again, this is a service they're providing.
Right,
So
correct.
you want to increase or decrease the level, the services they're providing, and then the fee should reflect that. So that would, yes, it would be in tandem with the budgeting. June 15th, we have, May 1st, I think is the date that we had in here. May 1st of each year.
And this also, Marty, you had asked about I think it was you that asked about the invoices, like how do we, this in here says that what they need to include with the invoice for each month as well. So, and it says they have to give us their fee by May 1st
Right.
each year, and it talks about the invoicing.
It seems like there'd be more logistics to go through if you had to redo the contract every year. If it renews, we still have the opportunity to amend the exhibits on an annual basis as part of the budget process if we want to. So we can amend the exhibit, for the fee and the exhibit for the task annually if we need to as part of the budget and still keep the agreement in place without having to go through a new contract every year. If it's only a 1-year contract, then you got to redo the contract.
Well, here we are trying to second guess 6 people who have been working on this for a long time too.
Right.
And so I'm not so sure that that's what we ought to be doing, but I'd still like to hear from Faye first before we do anything else.
Apologies, I think I'm losing my voice, so, Faye for most of my supposed to introduce
Yes,
myself,
please.
yes, Pelican Preserve. So I agree with most of what's been said here, and this definitely is a transition year, right? We don't know what to expect. And so we all agreed that we needed to spend some time talking about what we thought would be helpful for the community, so that we make sure that things don't fall through the cracks, right? Things get done. We're not operating as expected yet. We were supposed to have a full-time maintenance person. I know we still don't have that person, right? So Jen might be doing a little bit more than normal. She's still going to have some knowledge transfer she's going to need to do when that person does come in. And all of the services that we've listed there in attachment A and that we all agree to, we recognize could change per everybody's conversation here, right? After we get through a year and we get a year under our belt. Some of them could go away, some of them could increase, change, whatever. So from that perspective, it definitely is a transition year. I also see this though more longer term, because I also view this somewhat as what I call an engagement model. And PPCA, the board, wants to establish a relationship with the district and PPAC, right, to make sure that we stay engaged. And that we're representing the best interest for our community as well as you. And so we provided for that in the best way we could. And as Chelsea said, there were lots of discussions. We went back and forth and we had an exhibit B and it's morphed into this. We're looking for certain things like having standards that we participate in and that we all can come to agreement on. We want to be participative when there are significant changes that the district wants to make to any set of services or standards that we have that we've become accustomed to and that we have been paying for within our taxes to the district, which funds the budget. So we tried to provide for that as best we could. We wanted more, they wanted less. This is where we are. So I don't want that to get lost in this because I think that's really important. I see this surviving all of us, right? Who knows who's going to be sitting in any of these seats tomorrow, a year from now, 5 years from now, whatever. And I think it's important that we all understand what our role is and that we have a collaborative and cooperative relationship. They are district assets. There's no question there, but they sit in Pelican Preserve. And the only ones that really benefit from them are the homeowners and residents in Pelican Preserve, right? We're the ones that walk the streets, see the landscaping, sit on the benches, fish in the ponds, get the benefit of the gatehouse, et cetera. So I just think it's very important that we don't lose sight of that and that we maintain that connectivity, if you will, and partnership.
So one of the
Thank you.
bigger discussions that we had, which I think was a difficult pill to swallow for both sides, was this, for lack of a better term, say, right? Set PPCA's say into district assets, because historically they've overseen our assets and that's what it was. And now you're taking that away. We're taking that away, right? By canceling the O&M. And really by taking that away, other than them attending these meetings, we've taken away their ability to oversee and have say into what happens. And so at the bottom of this page, which was the biggest bone of contention, was any large changes or fluctuations in levels of service. And so what I believe we've come to a pretty good agreement on is this $20,000 kind of trigger. So yes, like Faye said, these are district assets that the subcommittees are overseeing. If Mark got a wild hair up his tail and said he wants to cut down every palm tree in Pelican Preserve and it's cost $58,000. Well, not to pick on Mark, but let's pick on enough. But according to this agreement, that would trigger the community association's input, not final decision, input to that level of service or contract.
So just to clarify, if there were a PPCA person sitting on the board, that would meet the criteria for this, correct?
No, not the way I read it.
No, because the item would have to go to the community association for their input.
So this is Marty. If we're giving the PPCA veto power on expending,
No, we went, that's a good point, Marty, because we went round and round and we used that exact term. And that's what Laura and I pushed
And
back on.
That's
and
why approval is struck in this.
any change or variation that would result in an increase or decrease of $20,000 or more in the annual cost of any one service will be brought to the PPCA for their review and input.
It does
Okay.
not give them
So
veto.
that is preventing us from executing our fiduciary duties in spending district assets.
It does not prevent you. It provides an opportunity for the community association to provide input. Now,
So
I'm
the
gonna caveat it.
PPCA is having input to where district money is being spent, then they're gonna be subject to open meeting laws?
That's a good question. That's a very good question, Marty.
So
It's a
they're-
big difference
if they
between
are
what we
providing
have to go
input-
through and what PPCA does.
I think don't quote me on this, this is just, yeah, he would have to.
He would have to weigh in on that.
Yeah, we've talked about
Valid
it before.
And we also have two different attorneys,
Well,
which is a issue.
now, Faye, if you don't mind coming to the podium and if you can answer. I'm assuming that if let's pull that thread on the palms item,
Mhm.
would you take this to your entire board at your next board meeting? Or would this just be a designated liaison like Jen or somebody?
So if the landscaping committee wanted to make a change, as you said, take down every palm tree in Pelican Preserve.
This is gonna bite me in the tail, I
Yeah.
know it is.
You know it's coming, right? Yeah.
True.
It's the next email that she's getting. So how would we handle that?
So according to item 11.
Yep.
It exceeded the $20,000 threshold. It would need to come to you all for your review and input.
So to
that-
me, the point of that is, right? So it would come to us. Us being, well, so it would, however we choose to do this, right? Whether, right now, Nancy is the liaison, right? So say Nancy and Mark have the conversation. And Mark says, I'm bringing this to you. We need to know what PPCA's position on this. Nancy could have conversations with us individually about it. and come back and just say to Mark, this is what and speaking of Nancy, I just conjured you up. And Nancy could then bring our collective position back and say, we don't want every palm tree and Pelican Preserve taken down. That we don't feel that's in the best interest of our community. We don't feel that's what our residents want, make our case. Now, to Marty's concern, Mark then has that input. Mark then takes back that input, right? And it would eventually go to PPAC then for PPAC to make a decision. We don't have decision authority on that. We tried to get that, but that wasn't happening. So our whole way to try and again stay engaged and to make sure that we had a voice was to make sure that we were consulted, which to me is, I don't know. I think that's just appropriate.
So then let me just throw something out there. If there were to be a PPCA person on this board, would that mitigate this need for that 11 on this document? Because then they would have immediate.
So the conversations we had was both. The request would be for both, to have a seat, designated seat for community association on this board and keep clause 11 in there. Now, to Marty's point, that's a conversation we have to have with the attorney about if there's an official seat. And I think you guys were working through that on your side too. If there was an official seat here, how does that play into this agreement? And really, I mean, again, these are all things that we need your feedback on to put into the agreement, because if you say no on 11 or no on community association, then I'm not going to waste attorney's time and money on going through that whole rigmarole.
And 11 is establishing standards also. So it's not just about getting our input on changes. It's also about establishing standards.
Yes. Very good point.
And a lot of that work will go on at the subcommittee level that we may not even be aware of. So until later, so getting that input at the subcommittee level, I think is very appropriate.
Well,
So
this body right here, okay, the title of it is Pelican Preserve Advisory Committee. So it is us who are concerned about what happens in our community. It's not just the community association. It's us as residents here looking after district assets. Okay, if the community association is directing funds to be expended on, no,
No, we're not directing funds, Marty. We
you're
can't do that.
providing input.
We're providing input. All we're asking for is for us to have the ability to have a voice in
Well,
what happens within the community.
Well, right now we have an opening on this board. Okay, and anybody in our community, has it been posted yet, the opening?
And why hasn't it been posted?
no.
So we have an
Well,
opening on this.
Give us
board.
5 minutes.
Stay
We'll
on
get back.
So we have an opening on this board that any member of the Pelican Preserve can apply for. So I would expect at our next meeting next week that I would see an application from somebody from the board to apply for the opening. If you don't, you're not really serious about putting a person on the board.
Well, Marty, this just came up and we're absolutely serious about putting a member on the board, which is why we've been having the conversations. And we were just told that we need to put an application in. So I assure you, there will be an application next week.
Okay. Because
So
I
You were
don't,
not intending to put an application in?
I didn't know what the process was going to be, John.
so
I don't know the process, so I didn't know what the process was going to be.
let me,
Or what the decision was going to be by the group. Yeah, it's not.
so I am getting off a little subject here. I am totally against forcing the Board of Supervisors to be in a position of requiring a PPCA member to be on this board. If the PPCA members want to be on this board, then they can apply for it without forcing the Board of Supervisors to say, yes, we have to appoint a person that's on the PPCA.
You don't force, you recommend. The board has
We
the final
recommend.
say, but if
Yep.
Well, the other document that we're going to discuss later on, I presume, looks like it's forcing the Board of Supervisors to say, yes, they agree that we are definitely going to appoint somebody from the PP Community Association to be on the advisory committee.
So Marty,
That's
we
forcing-
don't force,
Mhm.
we present items for their consideration. So just like we're presenting items for your consideration here, they can say no. You can say no. Absolutely. They are just, again, administratively, you all come up with the policies, we put forward and we do the action.
So I think the later document is not required because any one of them can apply for that position right now.
So, but Marty, what we have asked for is for the PPCA board to have a seat on PPAC, as Chelsea said. That's a decision you all need to make. And if you all say that you don't want to support that, then that's your decision to make.
So Faye, just for argument's sake, which of these two pieces are you most interested in? Number 11 or
Can I say
having a
both?
board? No, you can't. This is an either or. I feel like I'm
I
talking
don't
to my
wanna do
grandkids.
either
Would
or.
you rather?
Yeah, they're both very important, right? As I said, we're trying to look at this from a long-term perspective and a relationship perspective and recognizing that things could change, right? Anything could change. This agreement could change. PPAC could someday go away. Who knows, right? It may not be here. And so we're just trying to provide that place and that space where PPCA has a voice and an opportunity to be engaged and part of what happens within our community, for the assets within our community. And yes, it may be easy for me to say, but I don't think what we're asking for is unreasonable. I think it's reasonable for us to want to participate in those conversations and to participate where we can in decisions that are made on behalf of our community.
And I feel like Nancy has done an exemplary job
Mhm.
of keeping us engaged with what's going on at the PPCA level.
Mhm.
So from my perspective, I look at her role and the work that she's done, and I feel the engagement. Would I feel the engagement having somebody that I couldn't talk to on?
No,
See, that's a big difference. Right now, we can only discuss among ourselves
Mhm.
at a monthly meeting.
Right.
PPCA doesn't have that.
Mhm.
And that's because your attorney nixed it. There's a big difference, and that's one of the reasons you got a different attorney.
Well,
And that
there's different
creates
law,
an
there's
issue,
different
I think.
requirements. There's
That
different requirements.
Right now, we can only discuss things at our meetings.
Correct.
You have an opportunity to discuss it amongst yourself.
Mhm.
You have an opportunity to go to your attorney, and he could present a very colorful presentation at a meeting, at our meeting, that you can present to us. We're like, wow, that sounds great. But we would only have that opportunity to hear it then. It makes a big difference.
I'm not sure I'm following on that,
We
John.
meet once a month,
Mhm.
and we can only discuss things amongst ourselves
No, I understand.
once a month.
I understand.
You don't have that.
We're
You can
not, no,
discuss
we're not
things with
subject
your,
to that.
you're
That's right.
not.
I
That's right.
think they would be
I think they should
That's a
be.
question.
if they
Well,
are
that-
providing input to district.
Absolutely.
funds.
So in our initial conversations with our attorney, having conversations and providing input would not trigger the sunshine. Now, whether or not, to your earlier point, again, Marty, you were saying that if we had, obviously, if we had decision rights or we were directing the budget or something, then yes. But we still need to go back and make sure that we have complete clarity around that, which we would do.
Well, I keep going back to what would give us the best benefit for the district assets, which is our charge.
Mhm.
And I'm really torn. I mean, I can honestly tell you guys that, for me, I can see the arguments on both sides of it. But I really value having, the straight input from Nancy.
Mhm.
And would we still have something like that if we had, well, it wouldn't be Faye, but someone sitting on the board?
I think so. And that's the conversations that Nancy, you can chime in here too. The conversations that Nancy and I have had is that Nancy has done a tremendous job, right? And you all have, I think, forged some really good relationships and there's been really good dialogue, and, collaboration. And that to me would not stop. Somebody sitting on PPAC, it wouldn't be Nancy. We had that conversation because we said that likely wouldn't make sense, right? I'm sorry. I shut off my phone, but not my watch. So that would not go away, Peggy. We would want to keep that in place for sure. No, Nancy, I don't know.
Nancy, would you like to speak? I just want to be official.
Are you recording? Okay, Nancy Straw, Pelican Preserve. I apologize for being late, so I don't know what's been covered, but just a little bit that I've heard here. Whether there's a Pelican Preserve Community Association person on this board or not, there's still only one vote out of 7. And I don't think they would carry any more weight. We've talked a little bit about, should they be prevented from ever chairing PPAC? Possibly, because that does give more power and authority, but they would be one voice out of 7. And as far as the ability to talk to the other community association board members, you all have that ability every day right now. And I can tell you that we have board workshops typically once a month and we have board meeting. That's the only time we can talk as a group in front of people. They're not open to sunshine, but they are open meetings that are posted. And the number of times we've talked about any issue that would come before PPAC, other than this agreement, I can't think of one time. So even, I know Marty and I had a short conversation about sunshine, and what if Marty comes to one of the community association board meetings and there's a PPAC member on the board? I think that's not going to be an issue because again, those are different topics that we would be discussing. And we could intentionally not do that at a board meeting. I think that's easy to do. If it's unavoidable, we can get language from Chelsea and Laura that would put that caveat out there that this is an open meeting and so there may be more than one.
So it's noticed.
Right, right.
I have one thing. Has there been a third option discussed much, which would be PPCA having a representative that sits on on PPAC that's also comes to your monthly meeting and gives an update on what's going on here and so on and so forth. That could be an option, but I hang around with the board members enough that I know how busy you folks are. You are extremely busy. And do you really need this extra work to sit on a board like this or a committee like this? That concerns me a little bit. And I mean, you're the ones that have to put in the work, so I shouldn't be concerned about it, but it does. I've been there and done that, and I know how busy you are, all the hours you already put in. And then you still want to, put in another several hours on something like this. But a representative that kind of answers to the board might be another option.
And I try to do that now. I mean, every PPAC meeting that I attend, I take minutes and I send notes out to the rest of our board after those meetings and give them the links that are in the agendas. And they can also go view the recording online. They all know that. And I do that after Board of Supervisors meetings as well. So that would continue as far as I'm concerned. And if there were a community association board member on PPAC, you automatically have someone who can keep the board informed about PPAC activities.
Well, I guess
They're
it's,
doing that now.
it's five members that have to decide whether or not they want to take on that extra responsibility. It might not be us, but the other thing that I sit here and I struggle with this sometimes because Pelican Preserve, it's like two owners. it's like the government's in there, they've got the roads, they got the ponds, they got the security center. And then there's the rest of us that have houses and everything else that goes along with it, with the town center and everything. But our homes are dependent, our home prices and our home values are dependent upon how Pelican Preserve looks and feels and so on and so forth. So there can't be that fighting between the two, and there has to be a lot of cooperation and collaboration between the two. And for us to try to make a decision on, we're all Pelican Preserve residents, all the people sitting around here, except for Laura and Chelsea. And yet we,
Old enough.
I was
We're-
gonna say.
I'm
You
not
don't
old
have to be.
enough.
yeah,
Come on.
it's, and it's the money that the CDDD is collected from Pelican Preserve people for taxes and so on and so forth. So I think we need to get together, whatever that's going to be, and make this a real collaborative effort between all of us, between the PPCA and PPAC and the CDD, however best it is. And I'll be glad, I'm going to vote for whatever decision that everybody comes up with. Yes, I will. Yes, I will. Whatever decision it comes up with, that's going to be the best for that collaboration.
So to, I think, help a little bit with this. All district meetings, other than closed door sessions, are open public meetings. Workshops are the only really caveat unless, like today, you invite the community association up. They're your meetings, right?
Well, anyone can attend.
Anybody can attend, but for public comment, we don't typically have public comment for workshops. That's when you try to get through some of these items. I think the point of having at least this called out in item number 11 or having a seat at, we'll call it a seat at the table, is to formalize their opportunities for input into district assets. Again, we've taken it away by eliminating the O&M. Granted, they can come, their residents, they can put on their board hat, they can put on their resident hat, they can come here. But I think the intent was to have a more formal representation of the community association into our district assets. You all have implemented and formalized the subcommittees. You've given them charge, you've given them budget. They come to you with, final approval of direction on how they wish to proceed. If it's over 30,000, that goes to the Board of Supervisors. But I think the gist of this is to try to continue a relationship. And what services are you willing to pay for from the community association? And we've dwindled them down to 11. I think it's worthwhile that you go through them individually and kind of weigh in on them. Or if you think of others, we can add to it. But from the 6 of us over the last 8 months, this is what we've come to an agreement, I would say, from an internal perspective.
I think originally this started out as like 2 or 3 pages and we got it down to 11.
It started in left field and we're in center field now.
So that's a good recommendation. So can we start with attachment A and start at item number 1? So I'll start item number 1. Where is the communications? Because right now there's like no phone numbers that I know of to listed for the district on Pelican Preserve's website, nor is there anything in the January newsletter where KW's phone numbers were listed. Okay, all the KW. What about the district staff?
Well, but we haven't had this, implemented this agreement.
Are we gonna?
So if this
are we
agreement
gonna-
was put in place, then there could be. But there is some,
Okay, so are we gonna increase this from 27 pages to 40? Because now you're gonna include meeting minutes? Because it says Pelican Preserve Advisory Committee and Subcommittee reports and summaries to be included in periodic PPCA newsletter with GSCDD approval of the
oh,
content.
you're on 2.
Well, that's on 2. All right.
Yeah, so the point of that was so that the subcommittees can put things out to the community by way of the newsletter for things that they thought would be informative, important, or whatever for them to know. So it's just giving the opportunity for that to happen. Doesn't have to happen. It may happen. It doesn't mean that the newsletter gets expanded for, 20 pages because it has to represent everything that's happening. It's selective.
Well, I know on the district website, there's an administrative tab that you can pull down where it lists everybody's phone numbers, everybody's name, everybody's extension. And we have that for KW.
Mhm.
Can we expect that for the CDD?
If that's something that we all felt was important to have in the newsletter, then we could do that.
So
I would
to,
love to have that newsletter.
so let me
Well,
just expand on this a little bit. So recognizing I don't get that letter, I get that letter through the grapevine. I think that is an opportunity for, again, the cooperation, collaboration. They have already put the districts as a punch number, number 7, 9. For number 7, if you call Pelican Preserve's phone number and you hit 7, you're going to be transferred to the district. So they've already done that. And again, trying to work together. I will say, and I think it might be an internal issue, but we've sent out the advisory committee PPAC that it's available. We've sent that over to KW. I don't know if you guys with the holidays maybe just haven't had the chance to push it out.
He sent it to you and Adriana and you replied on December 21st, because it went out late on the 20th. We did e-blast it using our Constant Contact. So anybody in Pelican that's on Constant Contact that signed up to get things would have gotten it on December 20th. And it was also sent over to KW on the 20th.
So
Alright.
this would be an opportunity, again, for them to communicate to the community. Again, when it makes sense, we don't want to blast, but we would have say and review and oversight of what gets sent out to the community through them.
So just to clarify, and this is very weedy, but would then Jen be responsible for finding things to communicate? I mean, in what she's hearing, or would it just come from Jen? Would you like to speak?
Jen Lewis with KW. So what we've done is we're rotating it with the subcommittees. So I think safety and security had something in October or November, then lakes and ponds can come up, then landscaping. So
And
it's
then
just a
they create
rotating.
The language, and then you would just promote it.
So
We would put
one-
that in the newsletter.
one of
Go
the
through
Just thinking of the
Randy.
time commitment.
Well, one of the things too is if Jen is getting bombarded with, complaints of whatever it may be, I don't want to come up with another example because it'll come back to me. But then she could say, hey, district, hey, Randy, I've got, this is the 4th complaint of this that I've had this week. I think we should really push something out and communicate this to the residents.
So
Holiday
I
decor.
just wanted to make sure we weren't gonna be putting that on her, that would be dollars racking up trying to create language.
So I think we've exhausted items 1 and 2. Is there any more comments on 1 and 2?
When I talk to people in the community, when I tell them I can't do something because I'm coming to a meeting or whatever, they don't even know what we are, who we are, what we do. And in our newsletter, if we want the community to be able to communicate if they see problems and things, instead of going to one person that maybe gets bombarded with 100 different emails, maybe about the same thing or whatever, why in the newsletter can't we say PPCA, this is what we are, have a little blurb from each of the subcommittees, what they're doing, what they're working on, maybe if it includes the problems that they've heard, seen or are working on, people don't have to say, well, this roundabout's not getting done, this light's not getting fixed. So at least people realize where maybe some of the subcommittees, what they're doing, what we represent here, and maybe the projects what they're doing in the updates. So people don't have to keep saying, why isn't that light been fixed and it's been 8 months?
Right.
So if the subcommittees at least had something in our community newsletter that people do read through and, but don't even know who we are or what we do or what the subcommittees do and that they're actually there. Give an update of what they're working on so people don't continually say, this isn't getting done, this is bad, this is whatever.
This is from your
an overview of
website.
what-
We're gonna
But
send
I-
the, what's on the website, but also we do have a new resident orientation. It's the second Wednesday of every month in the movie theater. It has been almost a full house since we started. And in there, we do have a segment about Gateway. Bob, I
Yeah.
think Bob Geppert was
But-
there last month and, we let him speak. That's coffee
Does-
talk. We
Does the
have that
district,
every month.
does the district attend every new resident orientation?
No, we just have a slide in there that we talk about what Gateway District is and what they do for the community.
Understand that this is on both sides of the coin. So I know Laura's gone to a couple coffee talks and, I mean, we have 28 staff in total for the entire district over here. So I know these folks are, I mean, you've got 3 of them here today, you've got 2 of us here today, but all of these committees and meetings and coffee talks with Adams and new resident and PPCA, I mean, that takes a lot of our time too. So I know we want to, we want to be involved just as much as they want to be involved in our stuff. So, you know, trying to get more involved in what they're pushing out on behalf of the district, what language is being pushed out. We want to make sure that we have oversight and review of that, make sure that it's accurate. But it's double-sided here. We've got to communicate, they've got to communicate on our behalf and vice versa.
I'm still a little confused as usual. I have a landscaping problem, so you're wanting me to call the landscaping chair? Is this what you're saying?
You would.
Or I have a ponds problem, and so I call that person?
So we're working through, we're actually putting together an asset list and a who to contact list. I've been working over the last week with the chairs of all of those committees. We're actually getting ready to push out, it's called, right now we call it a request for action. So you just send a note through customer care, but we're actually pushing out a GIS like see, click, fix. So if you're out walking, I don't know if you have a dog, but you're walking the dog and you see an irrigation head that's broken on Pelican Preserve Boulevard, you can use your phone and send a ticket and we get it immediately. Or if this agreement's in place, you could say, hey, Jen, I was walking Pelican Preserve Boulevard at Benito and there was an irrigation head broke at the monument. And then she would put in the ticket. She would put in the ticket.
So there is a place, I was gonna say, we have a management service that if you have a problem, you go to the website and you put it in there, they automatically generate
Yeah.
a work order, so to speak, that
Yeah.
goes to the, either gonna go to
Appropriate
ponds or, yeah, goes to the appropriate one. So that is available too.
We're trying to launch it. Right now, everything's through customer care. Like you just send an email through customer care.
Okay,
But we're actually putting together a work order system that we're gonna launch to the public.
that would help. That would help.
It
All
would
right.
be, it would be gateway wide, including Pelican.
Is that
Okay.
through Casserole?
No,
It says this would be ours, our card reps.
Otherwise, it's gonna be very, very confusing for people.
well, and I think that is the exact point of the original conversation of this being a transition year. Everybody's accustomed to call Jen.
Yeah.
The coffee.
So
in the
that
Baroque
that
system.
is item number 3. Answering incoming calls and inquiries from residents regarding GSCD concerns. Refer to the GSCD as appropriate and respond to the provider.
Marty,
in a
you know how to
timely
keep
manner.
us on track, huh?
Yep, just keep it moving.
Okay, so I don't think anybody has a problem with 3, and we're done talking about items 1 and 2, correct?
So
So
again, you're be paying the community association for these services.
All right, item number 4.
No, we have somebody at the podium. Please.
It's actually duplicating a lot of what Chelsea said, but I was just going to remind y'all, this is a transition year. And is all the communication in both directions perfect? No, we've only been at this for 3 months, really. September, I guess we started September, 4 months. And it's not perfect. And this is the time of year at Pelican Preserve where all of our seasonal people are back and all they know is call Jen. That's what they want to do with everything. There's going to be some time involved here before people really get it. And I noted that Chelsea's coming over to speak to a group at the end of January in Pelican Preserve. Every one of those kinds of things that happen contribute to more people understanding what the CDD is and does. But to Sharon's point, you're right. A lot of people are just like, what?
Well,
They have no idea what
People
you're
need to
talking about.
understand that just calling Jen costs money. And it's $5,000.
Well, you either pay out through your dues or.
I don't look at that 5,000 as being a major deal because it's gonna go from one budget to the other budget. There's
Right.
two budgets, and so it's gonna be out of one or the other.
All right, so moving on, item number 4. Attend and participate with GSCDD staff for weekly inspections of district assets and Pelican Preserve and repairs and possible safety irrigation issues. We have a person on staff that does this, Daniel. Isn't that his responsibility? Why do we need KW staff to do that? Isn't that his responsibility?
But again, trying to have Jen be in the know of, if she gets 5 calls of a tripping hazard on Cypress Grove, then. So, and this one could be mixed. It could be, just a simple email. I know Jen has a weekly meeting set up with Daniel on everything Pelican. But this is kind of, again, that transition. This is what she'd done in the past. Transitioning it over to the district. Yeah.
It's kind of more like a boots on the ground. If they have a vendor that needs to come out and inspect the bridges, then I would be there to assist if they were in meetings. So it's just an extra person on site that's readily available, if I'm not in a president's council meeting or something, to go meet with a vendor or to go do an inspection if someone had a trip and fall incident on a sidewalk, for example.
So John, let me ask you this. You're the chairman. Do we need this because we have district staff that can do it?
Well, keep in mind, we're not making any decisions right now. We're just talking about things.
I understand that.
I think you're correct. We probably don't need it.
I think
Okay.
you do. I think it's that liaison role
Yeah.
where she can find things that are presented to them. She can make sure that they are on Daniel's list or whatever.
I make
think
sure it's on Daniel's list.
Whatever.
That's my job.
But
Okay, so we're gonna keep number 4.
I think it's important.
Yeah.
All right. Number 5, coordinate and interact with GSCDD personnel to share working knowledge of facilities and infrastructure to enable execution of their respective duties. I'm not even sure what that means.
So there's a lot of unknowns, right? And KW, they're a year and a half into the role. We're trying to figure out, I'll give you an example.
It's typically GSCDD personnel. It could be PPAC subcommittee personnel.
It could be both. It could be both, because really, once we get a maintenance person, they'll have to learn, where certain things are.
Let me reiterate on this one. Every Friday at 9 o'clock, Daniel and I have a Teams call. He has pretty much an action list, which is something he's going to start providing to the subcommittees as well. So they know what's outstanding on their to-do list, for example. So we meet for about a half an hour. We go through every single task for everything in the community, what might be outstanding, where we're at on it, where the vendor, has the vendor showed up. So that's pretty much what that is.
Gotta love those Citadel graduates, huh? All right, number 6.
Hey, now I'm out here listening.
Oh, all right.
Thanks, Daniel. And that will get better once a maintenance person there, but again, the boots on the ground, if I need the maintenance person, someone slipped, say, on some pine straw from the boardwalk, then I can assist and have that person go out and blow off the boardwalk.
All right, so number 6, GSCDD staff, assist GSCDD staff to ensure subcontractors and vendors are performing their work correctly in accordance with the scope as determined. This is not a KW responsibility. this is a district responsibility, and honestly, it should be Daniel's.
But this all Pelican Preserve, and it all reflects upon our community, and it reflects upon, our home prices, what I keep saying. And so why wouldn't we want to have that sort of oversight as well?
We should have that oversight with Daniel.
Well,
He
let me-
oversees the contracts that he administers.
Two heads are better than one.
sure, I think, but together we both do that. Well, let's do the Rock Solid, for example, Matarita 2 entrance. Contract was signed in April. We couldn't get Rock Solid there to save our lives. So every morning I would go in, Daniel, we text, hey, is Rock Solid there at Matarita 2? Nope, they're not. So instead of him, spending an hour getting in the truck, driving over there and back, it's more efficient if I'm coming into the community, I just take a drive up to Matarita 2, take a look at the entrance, and I send him a text, done.
And I
should
guess I
find-
have one other thing here. These folks, these 6 people spent hours and hours going through this thing to come up with attachment A. And here we are trying in an hour and a half to second guess them. I think if there's anything in here that's really, really, really serious about what they've come up with for suggestions, then we ought to talk about it. Otherwise, I don't know if we need to wordsmith every line item.
Well, and I'd rather have
I've
this
already done
document,
that.
I'd rather have this document be more inclusive than less inclusive, because it's already a price point. I want to get as much for our money as we can, and then at the end of this year, Jen will have some metrics for us that we can say she spent, a third of her time or whatever, and then we can say, what's the value of that? $100,000, I'm sure. Yeah. But the only one I really struggle with, again, people, is 11. Because to my mind, it's an either or. Either you have a seat at the table or you get to have more input. That's where I'm sitting. But I don't have any problem with anything else on the.
Well, just for our, if you guys don't mind, you're halfway through the numbers. If we could just keep going through them, just so we can get your input on them.
Okay.
I
right.
think that would be beneficial.
That's fine.
What number are we up?
You're supposed to
Seven.
be crap for it.
All right, 7.
7.
Providers, management staff, or their designee will attend all subcommittee meetings. Is that really necessary? But if that's what KW wants to do, that's a big burden for them. That's a big burden. I attend most subcommittee meetings. I attend the PPAC meetings. I attend the Board of Supervisors meetings. It's a lot of work.
I think it's important so that they know what's going on here, so that they can answer resident questions and things that come up, so that they know what's going on in the community. When residents come in and ask questions, they're very well.
You're saying that now, but that's a lot of billable time.
Well, so I'm gonna play devil's advocate here. Is that not their responsibility as it is to answer to residents and help, regardless if it's an HOA asset or?
I think it was under the O&M agreement. Without the O&M agreement, I'm not sure that there is. There's a lot of these things that we're talking about that if there's no agreement in place, there's no obligation of the community association to provide any of this. They could go in and they could take every mention of GSCDD off of every website, every piece of paper. There's no obligation to do that. But that's not what we want. That's not what we want. We want
Well, I look at
an
item
integrated
7.
community here.
I look at item 7 and I see dollar signs.
But
It's billable hours.
billable hours, what are you talking about? There's 2 budgets. It's gonna be on one budget, or it's gonna be on the other budget. You're still gonna be paying that.
I would just add that Jen and I have been able, luckily, to tag team on a lot of the subcommittee meetings. So if her time is needed elsewhere, I go to the meetings, and sometimes we're both there, but typically we tag team on those and share the notes.
And all of our committees and subcommittees are recorded and posted online for after the fact. So that's,
Number 8. Develop a list of items concerns that should be referred to the GSCD staff. And I understand that's Jen's weekly meeting with Daniel. Okay, any more discussion on 8?
So I just want to pull on that a little bit more because she has a better sense of the priorities in the community than perhaps us sitting over here in an office. So she could say, hey, I've got 6 calls about holiday lights, but I've gotten 3 about the globe on Cyprus. 6, it was just 6.
You just touched on the
As long as the palm trees are staying, we're good. So, but again, to Peggy's point, we felt that if you didn't put it in here, then how can I hold them accountable to that level of service? If we don't put in here that they attend all of the subcommittee meetings,
Or on the punch list item.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. So this,
Okay,
you
so
talk
they're
about
gonna-
a matrix, but this in essence is. a
This is Jen
contributing
and
factor.
Daniel's meeting. All right, number 9, GSCD staff shall attend meetings in Pelican Preserve as applicable to listen to resident comments and appropriate and able answer questions related to GSCDD from residents. So isn't this the new resident orientation?
There's, I think I'm attending Romeo. Romeo, is that it? Romeo?
Retired old men eating out.
Or, I don't know.
That's what it is, yeah.
That's exactly
Yeah.
what it is.
That's what it is.
What?
Retired old men eating out.
Yes. That's the one I'm attending.
I'll get
So,
it too.
so again, we're not paying KW for us to attend those meetings, but having this in this agreement, again, it goes back to the coordination, collaboration, hey, Jen might say, hey, the month of September, we don't have much on the agenda for coffee with Adam. District, would you guys be interested in, having a segment? Or with the new resident orientation, to Ed's point, they could say, we don't have to mention anything district related in here. Let the district promote themselves. But by having a slide in the new resident orientation, by offering, the district, again, this is a partnership. We're trying to take it from what it used to be to more of a, it's them overseeing and handling district assets to more combined.
And I will say, I went to the first KW new resident orientation and they did a much better job of, I thought, being a new resident, when we moved in, we had no indication that CDD even existed.
Now look at you on PPAC.
Yeah. Right. But
Sucker.
in their new orientation, they did address, the division of and some of that. And I think it's getting better, but we've gone from nothing, a year and a half ago or 2 years ago almost, to, a better representation and education of the new residents anyway through that. So.
Well, and keeping in mind as you're reading through this, keep in mind your subcommittees.
Yeah.
And how much they have taken on. You talk about these folks taking on a lot, staff that we've taken on an exorbitant amount, but your subcommittees have so too. Your chairs, I'm probably daily with Dean, I'm emailing. Mark, maybe once a week, Doug, probably once a week. So they have taken on a lot of the responsibilities that used to be in the hands of the management company and the community association.
Well, I'm not sure all our subcommittees know all the rules either.
We'll train them. You'll train them, Marty.
Marty's got it.
He's got it.
So I noticed landscaping being done without approval of the Architectural Control Committee, but that's another subject. Not sure. Number 10, support subcommittees and PPAC with budget development.
Absolutely imperative.
This is an item that could be eliminated because it's now, it should be eliminated because it's now Laura's job.
So subcommittees in conjunction with Laura.
Yes.
Correct. not KW,
Yeah, that's nothing to do with.
nothing to do with them.
PPA.
They have to still come up with a budget to tell us.
Tell us
Fine.
why.
Tell us
It's-
what.
it's- We have subcommittees that do that. We give
I'm
them a
not
pot
talking
of
about
money.
that budget. I'm talking about what they would be charging us to have this agreement in place. So they have to coordinate their pieces in with us. I'm not, I see what you're saying about the subcommittees, but I'm thinking
KW
more about,
doesn't-
That's what this statement is.
Sure, Peggy, that regarding their fee, that's actually addressed in the guts of the service provider agreement in item 3. That they have to give us a number for what it's gonna be by May
okay, so
1st.
maybe I'm confused on which one it is. So, thank you. Okay.
Again, this is just support, not
Yeah.
develop or dictate.
No, exactly,
It's
right,
support.
Faye Formoso, sorry. So it's, again, it's as exactly as Ed is saying, it's for us through KW, right, to provide support and input to the subcommittee. It says to things that we may see or we may want to be considered during the budget process for the community.
Okay, strike that, reverse it. I saw Willy Wonka this weekend.
Right, so we're saying we can strike it?
No.
No, I'm just saying I was, yeah, thank you, John.
So keep it.
Yes.
Yes.
I think so.
Nay.
We can't make decisions at this meeting anyway, so.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, number 11.
Elephant.
Yep,
Elephant.
save the best for last.
I will say that since I started here in May of 2022, this has been an ongoing conversation. So hopefully we can get it to a head and we can make a decision and move forward. Whatever that decision may be.
All right, so number 11, I cannot support.
Thank you for being forward.
Am I forward?
Not
He has
backwards.
a problem with, he holds back.
We aren't really sure what you're thinking there.
So just
Let me tell you how I really feel.
a little background on that too. The community association being part of development of the plans for those 3 subcommittees. Landscaping used to have a plan for Pelican Preserve before they were a subcommittee of CDD. And that has not necessarily been followed because it's not applicable anymore. But there still is value in having a plan, and CDD's been very supportive of landscaping committee. You've probably heard those conversations, Marty, working toward that. Ponds is much more sophisticated in their development, and safety and security and landscaping are getting there. I mean, they're getting better, I think, every month. But for the community association to stay involved, and again, as all of us looked at things when we met to negotiate this, we want this agreement to last long before this group of wonderful people that you see assembled now before you. But if it's going to really survive, things have to be stipulated and spelled out very clearly in there. And that was our goal. We don't want a plan for any of the 3 subcommittees to fall by the wayside. We want it to be developed and we want it to be a living document into the future, not just today or next week, but on into the future. And the community association, again, asking for input on things that exceed the $20,000 threshold. Again, it's only an input piece and we would be potentially 1 vote on PPAC.
Can you give me an example of where you would say, and don't use marks as an example?
I know
Give
where's,
me a realistic example of where you would see.
I can. I'll give you one example.
Okay,
The Wiser security contract is up. That's the elephant in the room. And that is really the
oh,
discussion,
okay.
the discussion behind this. So you have a roving patrol that is patrolling areas that are not district assets. There's a cost associated to that roving patrol that the district has had the burden for however long, I don't, way before my time. And so that is a very big bone of contention on what or if the safety and security recommends to you all, and then you all to the board on to pay for in the future or to not pay for. What benefit does the roving patrol have to the district? That's ultimately the question. So if this agreement were in place and that Wiser contract or that safety and security access control contract, that's what it's called, comes up, they would have input and review into that. Now, they don't have veto power, but that is one of the biggest conversations that we went round and round about.
Because it will be impactful to whatever our dues are on the other
It
side.
could, it could be impactful to your HOA dues if they so chose to pick up the tab for that.
Got it, okay.
All right.
That helps me clarify that one in my head. Thank you for that.
I have a comment on the roving patrol. Is he really needed during the day? I think he's absolutely needed at night.
Who's gonna get the donuts?
That's being discussed.
Marty,
with
you're
the-
bringing it. So that is all a point, and the safety and security is gonna start to review the scope that we're gonna, because we have to put it out to bid by the end of this year. They're gonna start to review the scope, and then that scope is gonna come up through you all for your input and comments as well. So that's a decision you're gonna have to make.
Start cogitating.
So with the Wiser contract, I really feel that they're incompetent and we shouldn't do business with them anymore. But that's another subject.
So that.
So let me tell you how I really feel about this interim agreement. That it really should be interim agreement. My goal is to eventually train the people of Pelican Preserve on the correct people to call for issues that are district assets and that are community association assets, and then eliminate this document in its entirety.
You know, Marty and I don't see eye and eye on several things, I guess. But to me, everything on here deals with collaboration and cooperation between the PPCA and the district. I don't see anything in there I would disagree with necessarily, maybe a few things you might change over here and there. But as far as I'm concerned, this is cooperation between the two agencies and our group as well. So I support it.
It's cooperation through a contract.
Yes.
They will be held to the contract terms, just like every other vendor that we hold.
That's fine.
Like Bentley.
Is this contract going to the board tomorrow or to the?
No.
boss?
No. So again, the current O&M agreement is set to expire this month. If this comes to, they have to take it to their board for their approval as well. So have you all had it vetted through your attorney? Was this the final copy that you had vetted through? Okay. I think the only thing that would be in question was Marty's point earlier about the whole subject to sunshine, if they have a seat at the table, or if they are requested input formally. That's a question that we have to follow up with the attorney just to firm up.
Are we discussing the item number 2 on the agenda now?
No, not yet. Stop. I know you're jumping, biting at the bit. We're in everybody's lunch hour. I ate a banana.
It's okay.
So really, I mean, there's ample opportunities for input here. Like we've talked about, 6 of us have come together. If the intent is for this to be a transition, we can tweak the language to make it a transition. I try to keep contracts in tandem with our fiscal year. So that, I mean, that may have to cut this one short or make it a year and a half. I'm not sure, really. I will say from a staff perspective, we're still trying to figure it out ourselves. I just learned the other day, we don't have street sweeping. We have street sweeping in Pelican Preserve, but only of the boulevard. Why not any of the side streets? So again, these are things that are gonna pop up over the next however long, regardless if KW or PPCA is involved or not. There's a lot of training on the staff side as well.
What is our next steps on this? What is the,
So you all would review and provide input. It would go to one of your regularly scheduled meetings.
would it go
It's on the
next week?
agenda.
Okay, thank you.
So you could approve it or not at your next meeting. If you recommend approval, then it would go to the next Board of Supervisors meeting. We would notify the community association that they would need to take it through their process for approval. And then once all of approvals, if approved, have been completed, it would take into effect whatever that first date of the next month.
And do we have agreement that we are going to do a continuation after the 23rd? without an agreement?
That's how it is. That's not, I mean, that's just how it is.
Okay.
So there may be a month or two lapse, depending on how quickly approvals, if it gets approved. How long that takes, and, you know, we'll continue, you know, pushing along like
We
we do.
won't drop service.
Not on our side. No,
Okay.
we're,
And
I
I
mean,
trust Jen.
there are district assets. We have to maintain them.
Okay.
So now, I mean, Jen could just say, hey, you need to call the district. You need to call the district. And then we would take the call, we would answer it, we would address what we need to address. Hopefully we'll have a maintenance person by then.
And the ticketing system.
Yeah. So just to be clear, we have no intent of just dropping services because that would not be in the best interest of the community. So we've been operating, Peggy, as though this is in effect, even though it's not in effect. We've been operating that way. And
Well, and that's why Jen and Daniel are having weekly meetings. It's, you know, it's not to cut cold turkey, but the big key in canceling the O&M agreement was the financial oversight of district assets. Through you all and through the Board of Supervisors, you put that in the hands of your subcommittees.
Okay.
KW and the Community Association have no financial oversight or payment of anything for district assets in Pelican. That all falls over here. Bills get paid over here. Vendor requirements, it all comes through over here.
I might ask the rest of the committee here, is everybody ready to vote on something like this next week yet? Is that too early for you,
Not too early.
Marty?
I can vote on it next week.
Can,
You could vote on it today.
I can vote on it today. I
Can-
can't accept it.
Laura, can you put that on the agenda? Okay, great, thank you. Yeah.
So
Taken care of.
for the terms, just so I'm clear, you want this to be a transition,
Yeah.
1 year, shortened or long?
I prefer.
I
long.
like it the way it is. Because we still have the opportunity to
I think it should be a one-year agreement.
change the, so.
I support 1 year agreement. And then we can adjust.
Right, you can always review it on a yearly basis. Or just approve it. It could be a real quick approval if everything's working fine.
One thing that complicates it slightly is, because of the budget stuff, if you don't end it with the fiscal year, then,
Oh, so it'd be better to,
So either shorten it or long it.
yeah.
So if hypothetically we got everything passed, February 1st is the February meeting. It could, if they got it, when's your next meeting for? So theoretically, it could take into effect if they take it to their board in their January meeting, we take it to the Board of Supervisors February 1st, it could take effect that day. And
But
then
are we
it
gonna-
could be through September 30th, or it could be through September 30th of 2024 or September 30th of 2025.
my only question is with the technology things that you're bringing out for the ticketing system and things like that, that's not going to be in place to be able to really prove the efficacy. So I'd much prefer lengthening it.
Yeah.
So
good.
now keep in mind, we're gonna have budget, if this contract goes until September 30th of 2024. The 60,000 would be what would be put in budget for next year. Unless you just did it till the end of September this year.
Yeah, what's wrong with doing it just till the end of September?
Well, that is 2024.
To me, that's so short because I don't know you're gonna get all the kinks and everything out of it by that time.
That's my concern.
There's, you gotta let the community know what's going on. There's all sorts of things that
So
are
you're
going
talking
on.
7 months?
Yeah, 7 months
Seven?
that's pretty short.
So you're saying technically we've already,
Been doing it for 3 months.
so
But
Unofficially.
Yeah, 7 months is
Sep-
pretty good.
September of 2024 sounds acceptable.
That would actually give us a full 12 months because we've started in October.
yeah, okay.
But it's, again,
Do you think that we could see the value in that time frame? I guess that's my question.
I've already
I
got
think
4
from-
items to be eliminated.
From a staff perspective, we've already seen over the last 3 months. Granted, we've had Daniel come on board, but I think we'll be able to gauge from a staff perspective during that time period, workload. I can't speak to KW's behalf, but I think from a staff perspective, that'll give us ample time.
Okay.
This is a little challenging because the first month that this was really being utilized was the crossover month. And so Jen had extra heavy workload then because she was still doing some of the work under the old O&M. And then there's a clause in here now that we have to agree to a new fee like by May 1st.
Yep.
That's always.
So okay, but it just came into this agreement. So now that if this isn't approved till end of January, March, April, that essentially gives us 3 months to establish a new fee. And then we have to have, your budget has to be ready by mid-June.
Correct.
So 7 months is a lot less than that to really determine what the scope of the new contract would be, in my opinion.
Yeah.
That's a pretty short time frame.
So technically you could come back and just say it's the 60,000 again, and then we would have the conversation.
Or it could increase
Right.
or decrease.
Well,
It could do either.
How long is it gonna take for you to get this system going about, being able to put in a work ticket?
Well, you can email customer care right now. If there is an issue, you can email customer care. We're gonna respond. You can call us, pick up the phone. The work, we're planning on launching it. We're shooting for February 1st. We're working internally on some kinks.
But that does not include the Pelican side. So.
We're gonna,
so, yeah.
we're gonna shoot for February 1st. That's our goal. But you can always email customer care or call us. So we've got mechanisms in place. It's just not the end result that we're planning on using.
I'm in favor of giving it some extra time personally, but that would be
I
my,
am too.
Regardless, if you choose to continue this through the September 30th of 2025, then that means the $5,000 a month would go through September 30th, 2025. So you would be paying $60,000 next fiscal year.
right.
Yep.
Y'all are still
I
divided.
just don't see how we're gonna need something like this, not need something like this in place on an ongoing basis. So, yeah, the scope may change and that, but to me, it's more of amending attachments and exhibits than
yeah.
new contracts. To
Eventually,
me,
we
we
should,
should get the
do we
agreement
vote,
in place
Chelsea, or what
and
do we
amend
do?
the scope.
this is just a workshop. You can't vote.
All right,
Can't
so,
vote.
all right, so what do you need? You said you,
I need clear direction.
well,
That way we
that's,
can-
that's a vote.
Well,
it can't be a
do it
vote.
here.
You can't.
Can we
take
do a
action.
straw poll?
Well, I think, so let me just recap. So generally speaking, items 1 through 11 of attachment A, you're good with.
No.
Okay, Marty, I know you're not okay with all of them, but as a collective,
Generally speaking.
Yes,
generally speaking,
Okay.
okay? And there's really no semantics that need to be adjusted. We're good with the $20,000 number. We're good with approving standard services.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
So the real question is the term. Is it shortened or long?
I go along.
I go along.
I feel it should be a 1-year agreement.
Long.
I'd say.
Okay. So what we can do is we'll address it through September 30th of 2025. The fee will be $5,000 a month through September 30th, 2025. Understanding that's what you'll be putting in your budget for next year for this fee. This will go to your next
That's
regular.
more than a 1-year agreement.
It is.
That's what I'm saying.
If you want, do you want to keep it at just 1 year? Because then it would go to February 1 of 2025.
What's wrong with that then?
They'll turn around and they'll say, oh, we don't have enough data to support anything other than $60,000. So then we would just do another 1 year at the same.
So here's the caveat to, I think, John's point. If you did it for just 1 year effective from the date that it gets signed, then it would expire. Let's just take February 1st as the easy. May is when they would have to provide the updated fee. So May of 2025 25 would be when they would have to provide an updated fee. Or if you choose to renew in February, that's when you would renegotiate the contract.
Just vote, let's have less steps. I mean, to me, that's, if we know that's what the value is gonna be, let's just
Yeah.
go with it.
Okay,
Well, I think the shorter term is prudent
so keep in
because,
mind,
because we can eliminate things in attachment A that we don't really need.
But we
That's
won't
made-
have the answers to 11. We won't have the wiser thing figured out by then. That's my big issue.
Wiser has to be figured out by September of this year.
Right.
Right, but not mine.
So if this goes until February of next year, it'll be figured out.
So you have plenty of time.
Plenty of time.
Keep in mind, you are an advisory committee and you recommend to the board.
Yep, for sure.
They have the final say. So they could say if that you all could recommend a long-term, like to September 30th, 25, and they could say, nope, keep it 1 year.
What would the staff recommend?
1 year from the date of. Yeah. From our perspective, again, to Laura's point, we've already really had 3 months underneath our belt. We're gonna be able to gauge more. It'll be in tandem with budget. It'll give you the opportunity to review. It'll give them. But it'll be before you need that budget number in May. So it's not binding until September 30th of 2025.
I could live with 1 year.
Yep.
I think 1 year is good.
I think 1 year is good because once we eliminate a bunch of these items on attachment A, we'll be able to decrease the price.
You are
So-
so consistent. I love. it.
Is there anything else
You can
that
still do that.
you believe needs to be added to? We haven't really talked about added to. No, I'm already feels. Anybody else?
I think you guys did a
You guys,
very
A lot
thorough
of fun.
job. Yeah.
we spent an exorbitant amount of time. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
The next elephant in the room, so this will come back to you at your meeting next week for, and we'll tweak for the dates, and get that addressed, and in the interim, we'll reach out to our attorney, about, which we'll discuss in depth the next item. But I think to Marty's point, if we ask input with regards to number 11, does that make them subject to sunshine? So we will ask our attorney that question. So now this next item is having a seat at the table.
Or that.
They're all residents of Pelican Preserve. They're entitled to a seat at the table. All they have to do is apply. This document is not required. And when I see their application and who's being presented to the board, they're a qualified person. I see no reason why they can't sit on this board.
That's an excellent point. Excellent point. I mean, to guarantee a seat on the board, and you don't know who even it's gonna be. You can have some qualified people. And that's a good reason for them to present as to why they should be on the board.
Death,
But
taxes,
an
and
automatic
sit on the
seat
board.
is, I mean, it requires a change in the law. I mean, our resolutions and stuff.
Not required. Can be eliminated.
Question in the wording of it says a designated representative of the PPCA. It doesn't say a board member. So it could be just a non-board member that's designated by the
Well-
PPCA, right?
So remember, if you are sitting on this committee, you will have to be approved by our board of supervisors. So yes, Ed, it could be a designated it could be Jen. They could
Yeah.
designate Jen, but if our board of supervisors doesn't
Right.
approve
No, I
it,
know.
then
But it has to be, it would be a
That's a key point.
PPP,
Ed.
it'd be a
That's a key
PPCA.
point. once again, excuse me, when we discussed this, it was longevity. Faye is up for election next year. So if she's the one who's on PPAC, pardon me. So if she's on PPAC and she goes off PPCA's board, is she still on PPAC's board? That remains to be seen. So by saying designee, it could indeed be someone else from the community that would have a longer tenure potentially on PPAC, or it could be a board member. We have a new election coming up in March. Hopefully it wouldn't change.
If it's a board member and they get elected out of the PPCA, then they can either stay on this board or they can choose to resign.
That's correct, as long as it's the PPCA designee. It could certainly remain the board member even if they go off, right? But it would still be PPCA board choosing someone to serve on this board is what we'd like. Again, it's the long-term continued communication between the two organizations and the long-term commitment of the community association to be at the table, be present, and continue to work with the CDD.
So
That was the goal.
You always have that input now. By coming to the meetings, giving your presentation.
I agree.
I
But
can
it
make
shows a
public
commitment
comment.
From the
That's true,
PPCA to
right?
this group. It shows a commitment for engagement.
I don't have to be here. I don't have to come to these meetings now, really, except that I think it's important to our community.
Well, I mean,
And
when you
we
think
wanna-
about it, it's only been the last 3 years or so that PPCA has started coming to our meetings.
And things
I think
got
that's a
better.
good sign,
Well, and we've appreciated your input.
right?
I don't think there's anything that we've disagreed with the way the communication has been at this point. But so
We disagreed with the PPCA when we eliminated the service agreement. Right, Faye?
But to guarantee somebody a spot, that is, it requires a change in the law, the whole thing.
No.
And
so
I have a big concern, the fact that we have 2 different attorneys. The fact that PPCA members can communicate more than once a month, like we can only express our opinion
Right.
here at our meeting.
But I look at this as like the way that I represent the Ponds group. I am their liaison. And it's my charge to make sure that I'm in communication with Ed and Ed too, with Doug, and to make sure that I'm representing their needs appropriately. How would that be different? Other than they get to name the person versus.
I will say that the difficulty, and I've seen it in past experiences, is when you sit here, just like with our Board of Supervisors, when you sit here on this committee, you are wearing your PPAC hat.
Mhm.
And that sometimes can be difficult to take off any other hats that you may be wearing. And I've experienced that when I used to work at the town. I mean, sometimes it's difficult for folks to focus, like, okay, I'm a representative of PPAC right now.
The biggest issue that I would see with a board member on this group would be that they may have to recuse themselves, I hope that's the right term, on issues dealing like the contract with the community association.
And I think, I'm sorry.
Of a conflict there.
I think the reverse of that would also be true.
True.
There was a PPCA board member on PPAC and our community association board was taking action on that agreement. They would also need to recuse themselves from that.
To me, it's kind of a 2-prong thing. I think it's important that I'm glad that you come to the meetings and Faye comes to these meetings.
Mhm.
And I think that's important because you learn what's going on over here. But the second prong is it needs to go back to your meetings once a month. What's happening here at PPAC, because that helps inform the community, says what's going on here, how their money is being spent over here and so on and so forth. So whether or not there's a board member sitting on this committee or it's a representative that comes to these meetings and takes it back to your meetings, to me is kind of the key.
just remember that what we just discussed had a stipulation in there that PPCA and or KW will be present at every PPAC and subcommittee
Yeah.
meeting.
Yeah,
So
good.
there will be that already there.
And as I said, I already take notes at PPAC meetings and send a written summary to our board, and they all know they can go view the recording. So I don't think that system's in place. I have another year plus on the board, so that shouldn't change.
Well,
So-
you'll be better in the next 6 or 7 years.
So one of the things that also has recently changed with the resolution earlier this year with PPAC was before there weren't, I'll call them term limits. There's not really a term limit, but there is a process where you're only on PPAC for X amount of years and then you have to reapply. It's not just you're on for perpetuity. That being said, that there is ample opportunities for anyone in Pelican to apply and be on here. But again, I go back to the conversations we had were long-term relationship. Again, all of this is really contingent upon what the attorney says with regards to Sunshine, because that may bind them. But we're looking for direction from you all, because if you say, yes, you do want to designate a seat for a designated representative of the community association, then we'll go talk to the attorney. If you say no, I'm not going to waste Tony's time or fees.
Well, let me ask this question probably for Faye. If the person that is the designee has to put on the hat of PPAC, what are you gaining? What are you gaining if they only are thinking about this fiduciary duty versus having just talking to us and expressing concerns? Because my assumption is that person would take it seriously. It would not just be your mouthpiece. That question, I mean,
Yeah, I'm trying to make sure that I understand.
Okay.
Peggy. So the purpose, as Nancy described, right, is again, if this is long-term, this is to strengthen our relationship, right? Engagement. It's an opportunity for a board, a PPCA board member to have conversations with PPAC, right? At your meetings, representing the community and what they feel is in the best interest of the community, while maintaining, I understand that they have to consider the district as well. But I think that it gives us the opportunity to speak for the community and to give that point of view, and what we think is in the best interest.
the community or your association,
I think the community.
and we don't do that.
No, not
representing the community.
completely understand that. I completely understand that. But PPCA represents the community, right? We all represent the community. So if it's in the best interest of the association, it's the best interest of the community. I'm not sure that I see
But I
a
just
distinction there.
why You're already on a committee that's representing the community, that you need to double dip, I guess, and go into another committee
With a guarantee representative.
with representing us in this capacity.
Well, it's not unlike it hasn't happened before. My watch is talking. And actually Chelsea was the one who raised this as a recommendation.
Other than you already know what we're doing, you already see the minutes, or you're already represented here in the meetings and you hear it. But what's the benefit of being on the board and having a vote that when you already have your own committee with your own votes of what you're doing in the community, and this is just a separate voting community? I guess I don't quite understand why.
we-
I think the concern was there's been workshops in the past where there's not been public participation and they have sat here in the audience and were not invited to the podium. So being a long-term formal way of having a seat at the table and being able to weigh in on district assets. Not necessarily, again, they're one vote, like I think Faye or Nancy said earlier. It would be one vote to 7 of you. Now, if you don't want to designate them as having a designated seat and leave it up to the open, that's fine. Phil Measy was on here and was the chair for however many years, and he was on the board.
Mhm.
So this, again, it's trying to take what what happened in the past with this O&M agreement, doing away with that, them having full control to no control, but how can we meet in the middle now? And if you don't want to designate it, that is fine.
Aren't we meeting in the middle now with? I mean, do you have an issue of what your role is? And coming to our meetings and if we ever not listened to what PPCA comments were?
Historically?
Well,
Take that one.
No, John, I've felt free to make public comment at any time. That's not been an issue. When I've made public comment, there doesn't have to be any interaction unless PPAC decides to do that. There have been times I've made a public comment and been invited to just sit down and I'm done. And so then there's no interaction beyond that part. So I
do not remember, in my term, do not remember that ever happening.
maybe it was at Board of Supervisors meetings, but
That's different.
okay.
But still.
But it still is PPAC's option. If someone comes up and makes public comments about your meeting or anything that's coming up on the agenda, you have the option to not even engage with them. You can just accept the comment and let it go on. If the person is sitting at the table as a voting member, they're open to joining the discussion and the conversation about any item that comes before you on your agenda. If you're in the audience, you do not have that option. That's all we're saying. And when you talk about the issues being discussed, I really can assure you that our board meetings for the community association do not discuss these topics. This is not on our agenda. We have a workshop coming up with an agenda that's very long. None of the issues that you talk about here are on our agenda. It's very different from the community association board meeting.
But that could change. You can't
don't know
guarantee
why
that
it
to
would.
be a case.
I think if we ask that person, if it's a board member who's on PPAC, they either have to abstain or recuse themselves. If there's any discussion that would come before PPAC, I think we can cover that pretty well because there's a limited number of issues where that could even happen. It's different types of business that are conducted at the two organizations. Is my perspective on it.
So your statement is that you want to level the communication playing field more.
We want to assure long-term engagement and partnership between the two. It's been stated, maybe Chelsea said, right now the community association is not under any obligation to publicize the CDD, to share information about it, for me to come to these meetings, for Faye to come to these meetings, unless we have something in writing where we're committed as much as CDD is committed. It doesn't exist beyond the people who are here right now.
Why not run for the CDD and use that argument to say, hey, this is why I would like to be a representative on the CDD?
You mean on the Board of Supervisors?
Yes.
I think that could happen,
Well,
but
then do it.
there, there's a lot of
I
people
mean, that would be
vote.
just as good a reason than guaranteeing a seat here.
Well,
And that's an election
elected-
process.
It's an elected position.
And
That's
that's a
different
great
process.
resume. Put it in a resume and run for the board of CDD then. And you would have more input than you would just with one seat here.
It's a different kind of relationship though, because you're focused on Pelican Preserve. The Board of Supervisors is focused on Gateway writ large. So it's a little bit different focus there again. I agree, it would be a great experience to be on the Board of Supervisors, but our chance for input regarding Pelican Preserve would be at this meeting.
Ultimately, the Board of Supervisors has the final say on if they do or do not have a seat here. So this is a recommendation that would come from this committee, if you believe that they should or should not have a seat.
I would still like to hear the legal requirement that they would say about having the shared. What Marty was talking.
I'll have to follow up with the attorney, but I can tell you if there's an item that will be coming in front of the committee, if you're on like this committee for action, you're subject to the sunshine. You can't have 2 or more members. I don't know how that plays into HOA, truthfully. I think we did have that conversation. We dabbled in it a little bit. There may have, was there differing opinions? I think there were slightly differing opinions on, how sunshine law was applicable. Obviously, if this is a district committee, you're subject to sunshine law.
In
Yet
some
that
ways,
representative would not be subject to sunshine law based on what their attorney interprets. And that's a big difference. We have 2 different attorneys, and that's the reason well,
if Nancy was sitting here as a designated board member, we could not talk to her on an issue. That's as I understand it, that's the Sunline law. With her sitting there coming to these meetings, we can all talk to her about any subject we want. We just can't talk to each other. So in some respects, if it's a board member sitting on PPCA, that's more restrictive from us to be able to talk to them, because we can only talk at these meetings. But if it was a representative of the board, we could still talk to the board members whenever we wanted. We just couldn't talk to that representative of the board.
Right.
Or that one person
right.
for that one issue.
And that's where, whether it's a board member from the community association or a designee, when they're here, any topic discussed here, they're subject to sunshine.
Right.
And they can't talk to anybody on this committee about it outside of this room. They can talk to anybody else in all of Gateway if they want to, or Pelican Preserve.
they can also talk to PPCA's attorney.
Well, we don't do that. I mean, the only way anybody talks to our attorney now is if Faye approves it, and it's very limited
You can't even get
communication,
an
so.
answer out of him, though. You
Well,
can't even get an answer.
she pings him all the time. But I don't know what talking to our attorney, I'm not sure I'm understanding, John.
My biggest concern is your attorney could put together a great resolution or something we're only going to see if you bring it here to us once a month. And it could be the way attorneys can put things together, looking excellent, but yet we would probably, let's say, word it in such a way that we would approve it without really having a good discussion about it. Where at your committee, you would be able to discuss it with your attorney. It creates an issue that you're not under the sunshine laws,
Well, again.
and we are.
But if I were on PPAC, which I don't think would happen, if I were any other attorney, the community association's attorney has nothing to do with the role on PPAC. Tony Perez is the attorney for this group.
But your
And they
attorney
would
can
dictate.
present things in such a way that you bring a comment here that's very persuasive. That's what attorneys do.
It would still be interpreted by Tony because he's.
But he
this
would only
attorney.
see it at the time of our meeting or if it's in the minutes.
Right, and so then you could table it or defer action, I
Yeah.
guess, if you need to, but.
So John, I recommend that we do not show this to the Board of Supervisors and present it.
Well, what I would really like is I would like PPCA to present a person.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. What
They
the
can,
discussion would be is if they
Then
want
let's see
one of
how
their
it
members to
goes.
be here, have them put in the application, and we have a group of applicants, either through the community and maybe a board member or 2 board members, whoever wanted to do it. And then we make a vote on who we decide is the best candidate. And it could be one of the board members,
Right.
or it may not be one of the board members, but the
That's
point
part of
is,
your
we
resume.
don't have to have this saying that we have to have a board member as the representative. Let them put their application in and we can review all the applicants to find out which one best fits our group.
I agree with that.
So
We don't need
we
this.
don't
You
need,
don't need it.
we just need the applicant. If they want one of their applicants to apply, then apply, and then they can make their case when they present themselves.
Correct.
And that is, sorry, That is a different relationship going forward, because we may have a board member candidate right now who's extremely qualified. You'd love to have that person on here. They don't get reelected. Then what? The next applicant? Okay, what if we have a board applicant that you don't think is qualified and you just reject them, and so we don't have any seat at the table? You're saying you don't think there should be a designated seat at the table?
That's because there might have been another person that was more qualified.
That's why I have recommended that you put Ed on here. That was more important for our community to get him on PPAC than for you to have an open seat.
So right now, there is an open seat on this board.
I understand.
So I have a meeting at 1:30, another meeting at 1:30. I would love to hang out with you guys all afternoon.
I'm sure you would.
I really would.
She's my ride.
All right, and we are advertising for
Yes.
a member.
Yep.
Okay.
Everything was sent out.
So,
It went out through constant contact and it was sent over to Jen and.
so while she does that, so. No. So ultimately, I have not heard any consensus or not consensus, any direction on if you want this to be brought forward to your regularly scheduled meeting. Or not.
I recommend we don't need this and we do not bring it to our meeting next week.
What we have to, wasn't it tabled or whatever until the next meeting?
Do
And
you
we're
know?
just discussing it here.
Oh, okay.
You can just say, no, we don't want to discuss this. And move on.
I know, but
We don't need.
it would be good to have. An
I would
idea.
like to vote on it.
I,
Yeah,
Officially, yeah.
Officially.
They're both items
So
I
the-
verified are on here because you
Okay.
tabled them from the last
Yeah.
meeting.
so we'll put it on.
The agenda.
and everybody needs to think.
Think about it.
Yeah.
Okay, so you'll take your,
That's the others.
okay, don't daisy chain though.
Yeah.
We
All
did
right.
listen. We did listen.
Cool.
I do seem to recollect when I first moved in here and started coming to these meetings. And you had the resolutions to actually create the subcommittees that EPAC, so the advisory committee submitted up to the board, actually had in it that the community association would recommend, one seat on the subcommittee. But that got changed at the board level, and that was removed from the actual. Yeah, so originally they were, as it was submitted up to the board, the subcommittees would have a representative of the community association on each of the subcommittees. But that got changed.
Probably sunshine law.
That's
Which might be the same thing here.
Which we'll do our best to get an answer before your next meeting. You'll reach out to
Yeah,
Tony.
Yeah.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah. I don't know why that would have been an issue then, so. I know there was.
So
a lot
I'd
of
like to make a
discussion on how
recommendation.
those
We adjourn the
committees,
workshop.
subcommittees were gonna work.
Marty's ready to go.
All right, I wanna get out of here.
I've
If
got
there's
a
no other
2
comment, we can.
I've
move
got a
for
2
adjournment.
o'clock.
All right.
Everybody's in agreement?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Good
everybody in the
workshop.
audience
Thank
too
you
for
for
coming
coming.
in.
You're welcome. I heard you.